What's up, Digidestins? This is Kyle D, better known as RideMyAvatar, and today we're going over the EX-06 tier list. So without further ado, let's get into this video, shall we? So as you know, EX-06 don't really change up metas very often. They kind of add a few decks into it, and then we kind of just take a look from there. So as you know from BT16, this was kind of where I was saying things were falling, and I think I had a good prediction on where things stood and how things planned out. So instead of redoing this whole tier list just to see the same shenanigans as always, I think it's a better observation just to take the original and add in the next few decks and then change up from there. So we got like 10 decks, but a few things need to change in the tier 1 category. So first off, Dominimon is definitely the deck on the top contender here, not Magna X. So we have armors. I think this is how it's going to go. To be honest with you, this drops down a bit. This will drop down quite a bit. It's definitely still tier 2, don't get me wrong. BT17 will definitely bring it into a little bit of a tier 1 contender. But right now, even taking a look here, we're going to say Fenry Luga is at tier 2 gatekeepers. You know, Setcon's still doing Setcon shenanigans. You know, we brought down Golden Rappa. It's just not doing as much as it should. I think Lilith Loop is still really good. Tyrant Kabuteri didn't even take any tops in this format. I think that punished it a little bit there. But at the end of the day, I think Tyrant is still a great tier 2 deck. I don't see it as a tier 3. Definitely great tier 2. That kind of does some shenanigans, especially similar to Imperial Dramon. If it sees its pieces, it's a very scary deck. And another thing I want to make some slight corrections on is that there was... what was it? This one. I was definitely dead wrong on this deck. This is definitely a tier 2 deck. This is the Vikemon deck is the representation of the Shakukamon, whatever the thing is, of that Jagras. Similar to how Valkyrie Ace does some shenanigans. Same thing here. Both decks are really good tier 2 decks. They do some surprising work. They definitely put in the effort that it needs to be. So I'm definitely bringing them up to tier 2. They are not bad decks all around. People are still learning how to develop and test with them, but with the evolution of the meta so quickly in the next couple months, I don't think there's going to be a lot of time for like Valkyrie and the Vikemon decks to really shine their best. I mean, with the Vikemon deck, it has some events that it's topped, not like big tournaments, you know. I think smaller events, it does really well. Same thing with the Valkyrimon Ace deck, which is the Sylphimon Jagras deck, and this. They both can do something, but it still has to contend with the meta here and contending up here. I definitely think, you know, these are like the big boys of the format right now. And let's get into what I'm going to say for the next... Why are you here? Gotta love how Fanglong gets mixed in again. So taking a look right now, we're going to talk about the Gates of the 7 Deadly Sins. Right now, I'm going to say it's probably going to start off like people are thinking it's going to be a tier 1 deck. I'm going to straight honest with you. I think it's a tier 2 deck. And let me explain a little bit why. The deck does a lot of crazy shenanigans, but right now, decks like Yellow Vaccine play Pillomon. Decks that play, you know, what this Numemon list plays a few cards that really don't like it. The Chikurimon. So stuff like that matters. And then Mirage can jamming OTK that just doesn't care unless they hit an option. If this deck goes off without a hitch, this deck doesn't stand a chance. Same thing with the Emperor deck. That deck just doesn't care sometimes that you just gave them a bunch of free memory. So keeping that in mind, sometimes that choke point matters. And if they play Gutsumon or anything like that, any deck that does play a way of preventing you from playing things by effects or playing anything with a reduced cost, that gets punished really heavily. And if you're just passing turn in this format, that's just giving these decks that are playing like Numemon engines just the speed and ferocity that this deck just does not want to handle. I'm going to definitely say Fanglong's definitely gone down a little bit. But all in all, though, I think Lilith Loop, even with the new shenanigans that it's trying to go with, I think right now we're just taking a look at this. I think we're solid here. Then we have Ragna. To be honest with you, Ragna's definitely a tier 2 deck. This deck can surprisingly take people out. The deck, if you don't have the answers at the right time to deal with the stacks at the exact moment you have to deal with it, its protections are very wide and vast, and definitely a gatekeeper, if I would say so myself. Bird, fish, shenanigans. They keep getting support, but it just needs better support. This deck topped 0 times over the format previously, and that's really detrimental. We're gonna say right now, Mastemon, tier 2. It could definitely surprise me, but Mastemon definitely feels like its old self, and the new support really does help it out, but it's still going to suffer the same aspects that it suffers with Imperial Dramon and like the Sylphie and the Vikemon decks, is that it relies so heavily on trying to get its pieces as soon as possible to go off. If it does not and it misses anything, you're in a bad spot that whole game and you're playing catch up. And if your opponent is playing any of these big boy decks, you could see some trouble brewing for yourself. Mastemon can deal with, Magna a little bit, but you have to be at the right time at the right moment to go off. We got Dominimon. I'm gonna say this right now. This deck is definitely crazy strong. From playtesting and everything like that, it definitely keeps these boys. It keeps up with these boys consistently enough that I'm not afraid with Dominimon to say it's definitely a tier 1 deck. I would have kept 7 Deadly Sins up here. Probably the first couple events, this is where it's going to feel like, but eventually people will adapt with the negators, and boom, you're kind of in a bad spot. Dominimon, though, suffers a little bit from the same problem that these decks will have, but, Yellow Vaccine does Yellow Vaccine shenanigans, is always going to be that good. The Journey into the West deck, I wouldn't be surprised to see it in top 16s. I definitely think it takes a good pilot on there, similar to Mugen. I think this is where like pilots really matter kind of area, where it's just not auto-piloted, and that's really important. I think when we take a look at it, I think this is where pilots really are determined based. And if you can keep up with, if you're a really good pilot on the deck, you are really going to do some shenanigans, and your opponent just has to deal with you. So keeping that in mind, we just have to look at that. Cherubimon, I definitely think it's a tier 3 deck at this point. Cherubimon's getting support consistently enough, but at the end of the day, Cherubi's just not doing what it needs to. Diaboro, we all know where we want to put Diaboro, right? We want to put it up here. Tier 1, no hands down contest, right? Now, we want to put it right up here. No, guys. Tier 2. Definitely a pilot-centric deck. Needs to also see its pieces similar to Ragnarlord Ace and Mastemon. If the deck goes off, it goes off. If it sees any of its problem childs, which, let's be straight honest here, suffers from the same retrospective that the 7 Great Demon Lords suffer from, a Pillomon can slow you down for a full turn and a half, and that's going to suck if that happens. You can't play by effects. You're kind of screwed if that happens. Then we have Lilithmon. Lilithmon has some potential, but right now I think it's a tier 3 deck. The only reason why I'm saying this right now is that when we take in Lilithmon, Lilithmon can cause a lot of problems for our opponents to deal with. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think once it gets the new wave of support, though, I think it can jump to tier 1, tier 2 very comfortably. But right now, just needs a bit more. It just needs that little bit of salt seasoning in the recipe, and boom, it is gonna go to town, in my opinion. I think that's vitally important. And then we have Bagra. It's just straight up Bagamon here. This dude is just a bad deck. They just so much draw in a game, and we don't care about card trashing this. That's a problem. I think it just doesn't do anything right now. Yes, it has Don Devi. It has so much support coming into it in this one set. It's really solid. I think it just needs its X value evolution, and then maybe we'll see some great shenanigans. But all in all, though, I think we're taking into this with strides. I think we have a lot of potential. We have a lot of great tier 2 decks. I don't know. We'll probably bring Examon down here. Just needs a bit more. I think that's really important there. I think we'll bring this down just because it isn't really doing much in the tier 2 category. Leviamon's here is fine. Old Magna X with some of the new support is still decent. I think the Gatomon deck is still good there. But all in all, though, there are some decks that can surprisingly steal a win. There's going to be other decks that are going to struggle to do so. But at the end of the day, I think looking at this right now, this is very solid tier 1. Tier 2s will pop up. There's no doubt in my mind, especially since we got a bunch of new tier 2s. We got Gated 7 Deadlies. We got the Journey into the West. We got Diaboromon. We got Mastemon. We got Ragna. You know, taking that into account long-term wise, where did I put Maste anyway? Oh, Maste's here. We're just going to move her down here. But I think at the end of the day, this looks solid enough to say this is a solid tier list. I think, yeah, Darugamon can definitely do some shenanigans depending on which version you're playing. And, you know, at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? Rapidmon still does some good work in the local scenes just because your local meta. Rapidmon takes a good pilot. Like, at the end of the day, what are you going to see at your local scene too? And a lot of comes there. Red, Purple, and Imperialdramon definitely is a good deck. I'm going to be straight honest with you, but it just needs a little bit more. That last bit of seasoning that will get it there. But all in all, guys, I don't want to say there's 1.5s anymore. I haven't done that in a little bit because, you know what? People are so afraid of going like, well, my deck's a tier 2. Why? They are definitely gatekeepers and holders in the meta. They apply pressure. They do what they need. And I think right now we have so much solid contenders for formats that even going into BT17, we're going to see a small shakeup and stuff will move up. Like Imperialdramon's definitely going to move to tier 1. But at the moment, I think this looks solid for a tier list. What do you guys think, though? What should I have improved? Should their other decks be ahead of the others? I don't know. I think gatekeepers have a lot of variety. We have a lot of decks that can just do some good stuff. And I have no objections on this. But guys, what do you think? Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!